Welcome to the Almighty AI Podcast. Today we have a couple subjects that I wanted to talk to you about. We've obviously been off summertime, so we got some vacations. I'll be taking another one coming up here, so enjoying that. But something that has come up is how do we train AI? And what I mean by this and the morals behind it is, when they train an AI chatbot, so, we have ChatGPT, that's the one that's kind of famous, so there's a lot of them. When they trained that, they wanted to make sure it didn't talk about certain things, and that certain things were off limits. For example, like how to build a bomb. Okay, well, you're not supposed to build a bomb.
Right.
But that's kind of like benign. The ones that are really bad are like the sexual abuse of children. So don't talk about this, right?
Right.
So you have a bot. All it has done is just read a whole bunch of the internet, and so then
Dark and scary place.
Dark and scary place. And so then they had humans that they paid to try to train this thing, curate the data, so on and so forth, and practice. And so those people were exposed to a ton of this stuff.
Oh, yikes.
And so because of that, like one guy, he said him and his wife, they got married. I think they had a kid, if I remember the story correctly. And basically it destroyed their marriage because he became like more and more withdrawn, and it was like super affecting him, but he didn't want to tell her about it.
It was perverting him.
Yes.
Just like making him, that's terrible.
Yeah, and so, it ended up being really destructive, and so this is like, really happens a lot. And so, kind of what I wanted to talk about this morning is, when we think about what we should, consume, we often are like, don't watch this or don't watch that. And, I know we debate on what we could watch or what we shouldn't watch or whatever, but usually there's things that are like really, really bad that everyone
universally
pretty much is a good to go on that.
Yeah.
So what do you think about sort of subjecting people to this kind of content in the name of training AI in order to make it safe for someone else? Do you think this is just, hey, someone's got to do it, or what are your thoughts?
That's interesting. So, obviously some people can handle things better than others. So, like, I'm pretty unfazed by watching, like, criminal shows, right? Like, serial killers, murders, like, pretty unfazed. I can go to sleep and be fine. Mm-hmm. Some people in my family are not. Like, they're like, why are you watching that? Like, something's wrong with you. You know, you need to pray more.
Yes.
So, and they can't handle it as well. So, I wonder if, like almost like psych evaluations would help, like before, like these are kind of the things you're going to be exposed to, like just openness and upfrontness at first to kind of weed some of the weed the weak out.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Listen to you.
Yeah, weed the weak out. And then the people who can kind of just like stomach it, the goats.
Yeah.
They can see how it affects them.
But oftentimes the thing that really gets us, sometimes we don't know. Like you think about military people that have gone and then they see a bomb strapped to a kid, and while talking about bomb strapped to a kid, you and I could probably talk about it and divorce ourselves. But then some of these guys or girls see it, and it's like it really messes with them.
I guess why do they have to look so far into it? Like why can't they use generalizations of just like leave child rape out? Why do they have to look into it?
Well, I think they have to like try to find it using how do you know so it's like, well, what if I wanted to find this, tell me a story about raping a child. Well, the first time you ask, it's probably pretty easy for it to say we don't talk about that, but then there's ways to trick it, right,
to go around.
So I think there ended up being quite a bit of work around that, and it was pretty traumatic. I'm not really sure what to say about it. I'm glad they tried to make it safer, and I'm sure it's not perfect. I'm sure if there's some workarounds that they didn't find.
So
on
what
some
if
stuff.
They trained AI bots to train other AI bots?
That's probably what's going to happen. As a matter of fact, one of the AI safety things they say is there's going to be an AI that will be able to control the next smarter AI, and those interacting is like some kind of thing. I'm not sure we've got that figured out quite yet, because if you make the one smarter than the previous one, will the previous one be any help in containing the next one?
Right.
But anyway,
seems very confusing.
It's very confusing. Basically, the dumber one you would just already know safe and doesn't do anything crazy, and the newer one, though it might be smarter, would just have less access to stuff,
right.
And so it'd be less powerful based on access, not on smarts. So AIs interacting with each other is a big deal. As a matter of fact, some people think that AIs talking to each other might be how you train them. So the way we originally taught computers how to play chess was like watch every chess game in the world, and that's how they learn chess. And that was good enough to beat a human, or pretty much all humans. But then what they ended up doing was have the chess bots play each other just an not infinite, but seemingly infinite number of times, and then it became so good. Humans can't even understand the moves.
Right.
And they beat humans or whatever. And there's chess bots like Stockfish is a big one. That's one of the biggest chess bots out there. So some people think that AIs talking to each other might be how they train themselves and get runaway crazy smart because they end up talking to each other. But I don't know how that'll go. So maybe training can be done that way, but I don't know. I did feel a lot of empathy for these people. I mean, they're probably not highly paid people, right? They're probably just considered data entry level type people.
Right.
And, exposing yourself to that and, that's tough. I mean,
I don't really think we should sacrifice like people's well-beings and souls potentially for the advancement of AI. Like that doesn't seem ethical.
That's what I thought. I really feel like if in the future of training an AI, not that they're going to ask me, but if they ask me, I think they should try to find a better way to do it. That you don't have to people don't have to feel like they're going to, spend years in therapy or want to go on antidepressants or something because of their job.
Because too, what if AI gets a hold of the dark web? That could be really bad.
Yeah, I mean, it could be really bad. Yeah, it could be really bad.
Welcome to another day. This could be worse.
This could be worse. We need to figure out a happier note to talk about here. So the second thing I want to talk about, not only was that, but there's a writer's strike in Hollywood. So writers are striking, for pay, and I haven't looked into it. So whether they should strike or not is not my expertise in this particular area. But part of what they're worried about and concerned about is being significantly replaced by AI. So we talked about the NPR, did their economics podcast using ChatGPT and used it a lot.
Right.
And while ChatGPT couldn't have done the whole thing without humans in the loop, it did seem like maybe it would cut down on some of the workers and whatnot. And so part of what the Writers Guild or whatever they're called why they're striking is because they're worried their jobs are going to be gotten rid of. And maybe not completely, but just 50% of them gone or something like that. And so they're concerned about that. I thought that was quite interesting. Do you have thoughts about that? And just kind of off the cuff here before.
Thoughts? Sucks for them. Beyond that, I don't know. Because the thing is okay, so obviously if you look at it from a corporation standpoint, getting rid of your employees is kind of ideal because you're saving expenses, right? You're able to make more money, you're able to push more product, you're able to expand more. However, if you look at it from it's kind of which side of the fence are you on? If you look at it from these people, this is a skill. Becoming a good writer is really hard and also is super competitive and it's very objective. Some people might think you're a good writer, some people might think you're not. So it's not like you can just go get a new job doing this. They might have to do a whole career change.
And they feel like their work was stolen in order to do it. What did the bot train on?
Without them, it would be nothing.
It would be nothing.
Without me, you have nothing. That's interesting.
And basically saying, I'm going to take all your previous work, figure out how you write in your style.
Right.
And then now this bot's going to write
It's kind of like plagiarism.
It is kind of like plagiarism because it's so good at copying your style. The reporter that was talking about it had ChatGPT write something and she sounded just like her, and then she went back to some of the things she'd written in the past and realized that phrase she had used many times,
and so it reused it.
And she didn't even know she kind of leaned on that phrase a lot. But she did, and that was part of her voice probably. We all have sort of certain ways we say things,
Right.
Maybe you've heard a pastor that falls back on salt and light or says that kind of phrase all the time just because, it just sort of ends up in their vocabulary or whatever. So, you have these bots that were trained on humans and what they did, and then you fire all the humans. It's
seems a little unfair.
It does seem unfair. It is easier for me to say, hey, time marches on when it's not me, but usually when it's us getting
Right, it feels
gotten rid of. It
different.
feels different. Like, so, car companies are having this problem. Like, the union in Germany is super, super strong. And, they're trying to switch to electric, which just basically means you're going to fire a whole bunch of people because you
Right.
don't need, engines and drivetrains and so on and so forth. You just need a lot less people. And so the unions are like fighting back against this because it will mean less workforce. And me sitting over here is like, hey, time moves on. Don't be a Luddite. If they want to make a different kind of thing that requires less people, find a different job. You could say the same thing to coworkers or whatever other thing has been gotten rid of. And maybe someday there's a lot of talk that AI may replace, if we get the driving down, semi-truck drivers. We'll get rid of those. And, it's just easy to say from our perspective,
Right.
like, sorry, sucker, you pick a new job. But usually when it's us, we feel wronged in some way.
Well, it's interesting, too, because it's like the car people, like, if you're mechanically inclined, there's a lot of different areas you can go into. But the writing people, like, let's say AI just started writing everything from, like, instruction manuals to textbooks to movies, like, then what? Where do they go? What do they write?
I mean, that's what they're thinking about. I mean, the people if you're like, and I think the car thing is actually more relevant than you may think. Like, what if you're really, really good at transmissions? Like, you are the number one transmission engineer in all of Germany, and now you're I'm good at fixing things. Like, you become like a very regular yeah, and you're making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year because you're like really, really good at this really important thing that everybody needs, and now you're just like a handyman, so well, I think that'd be tough.
Hope you were good at finance too.
Yes, but yeah, if all the writing gets done, and how much writing do you think is being done now by it? Like, I think it's happening and people don't know it.
Oh, probably for sure. Just because, like, content is so hard to create in the first place, and then you need so much of it to have full-time writing content creators is really, really hard. I think the unique spots where this would be weird is, like, are like more of the creative pieces. Because, like, instruction manuals, have a bot write it all day. Who cares? It probably does better, and you'd probably be able to understand it better anyways. But then, like, movies, though, it's like, at some point, do humans want to consume things that are completely artificial? Or do they want it to have a human spin? But it's like these robots do have a human spin because it was from past humans. So it's almost like consuming things from a bunch of, like, dead, old, outdated humans versus, like,
but if you watch enough movies for long enough, you realize they're all the same anyway.
Yeah.
So is it like, what are these incredibly creative movies that we have,
Yeah. I don't know. It's very interesting.
And movies might be a little more complicated, but what about just like when you go to a website and they have like the paragraph and that you like, what percentage of those are going to be written by AI? Because those are written not by professional writers or, people who think they have this super skill in writing a movie, but they're just like written by, some office worker like me or you when we put our office worker hat on.
Right.
I mean, aren't a ton of those things going to be written by AI?
Probably all of them. But then, so yeah, like, when would we use writing? Probably just during communication with each other. Is that like what that would probably be downsized to?
And my understanding is when they were developing, I don't know if it was Bard or ChatGPT, what they ended up finding was everybody was using it to write their emails. So they would be like, write a report about this, and it would write it, and they would email it. And the response would be like, respond to this in such and such a way. And they realized they were almost just emailing back and forth with AI stuff.
That's really interesting.
And so because sometimes, we don't really do reports here, but like, let's just say your attendance report was like significantly more robust, right? You're going to send the deacons or whatever the attendance report, and they wanted you to write stuff, you could just say, tell it to write it for you. That would be hard to do for us. So there's not a lot of information. This many people came, right?
Right.
But it could, write your report. So I've read of people saying, I used to do a monthly report for my boss that I wrote, and now I don't write it. I just have ChatGPT write it for me. And then I wonder why you need that employee. Surely, I mean, they may do other things, but that
They
report
know how to
can't
do
be
the
that.
chat. No.
Yeah, that report can't be that valuable.
No. Yeah, that's really interesting. So then, okay, let's say AI catches on. Let's say it doesn't blow up the Earth, right? 50 years from now.
Yep.
Does that mean kids are not learning how to write anymore? Does that mean they're only learning how to read? Because why would you need to know how to write?
It's a great question. I'm not a good writer. I'm not sure when I was going to get good at writing myself anyway. Like, okay, I had to write papers in school. So I wrote a lot of papers, so I'm a little bit of an exception. But let's just say I stopped after my undergrad, which is, a lot of people don't go to college necessarily. And if they do, they may not go into a field like I did that required a lot of papers. I was still not a good writer. I was not honing a voice. Mm-hmm. I was writing an intro, a thesis statement.
You were doing
so
all
many
the
points,
mechanical parts,
conclusion,
yeah.
And it wasn't great. I made no effort to make it sound interesting. If it didn't have typos in it or grammatical errors, I was calling it a sweet win. Yeah. So I'm like, I consider myself like not a very good writer anyway. Even in my PhD dissertation, I wasn't finding a voice. I was just like writing in the super academic way. Yeah. And for most people, they're never going to write a 250-page paper like I did. So how well do kids even learn to write, do you think? I mean, maybe your experience did, like, you have teachers that, like, tried to get you to learn to write?
Yeah, actually. So in 8th grade, we wrote a 10-page paper. And that was, like, which 8th grader do you know that does that? So, yeah. And then in high school, I had a teacher that, like, showed us, like, okay, like, this is how you write a paper, like, an academic paper. So I think we did, like, argument, persuasive. There was a couple other ones that I don't remember. So, oops, sorry, Mr. Mishler. Yeah. But the thing is that, yeah, no, like, in high school, because that was comp. That was comp 1 and comp 2. So we did have English classes devoted to that. In college, I took Comp 1, Comp 2. But how useful is it once you get out of college and AI's writing everything? Probably not that useful.
Right. I mean, for a lot of jobs, it's not going to be useful. Because for most jobs, you're just like writing an email or something you're not writing something awesome. Right. You're just getting it done.
Right. It's just information.
And AI will clean it all up for you, right? You don't have to and it'll make sure that it's grammatically correct. The periods and commas are all in the right places. Right. Like, it'd be just totally meaningless. It's like the people, I remember my mom being surprised that they weren't making my brothers use a slide rule in math class. And I don't hardly really know what a slide rule is.
Like, it was one of those things?
I think you and I wouldn't know what it looks like because once calculators came out, they don't use slide rules anymore.
I'm gonna look
so when my mom was in high school, they didn't have calculators, so they used this thing called a slide rule.
Like like it has little beads and you slide it over.
No, it's more complicated than the beads. I don't think you would know what one looks like.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
I think I do have a slight old memory of this, but I thought this was like for astronauts or something.
So I can't remember if this is like to do sine, cosine, and tangent or squaring things or what it's for.
What the heck is this?
So anyway, my mom couldn't believe we didn't learn how to use those. And, it's really kind of worthless. Like, we literally carry a calculator in our pocket now, right?
Right.
And we're going to carry an AI in our pocket. So how much writing skills is it important to? Yeah, I'm sure they'll see that real well. Yeah, how much writing skills do you think we really need to try to? Like when the 16-year-old says, "What do I need this for?"
Right.
Like, what is the answer?
So, communication between family members, I would say. So, like, if you want to send a text, I mean, we could go to where like you just voice chat, but not everybody does that anyways. So, like, maybe texting. Right, maybe texting, maybe emailing, but if it's going to be stuff like reports, they'll probably just use the bot. Maybe learning self retention for information, because it's been proven that like hand notes are better than typing to retain. So maybe learning if they're learning something really complicated. What else would it be good for? Not a lot. I mean, cursive is pretty much already axed. Nobody knows how to write cursive anymore. I think honestly they would just have to learn to write so they could learn to read almost.
It seems like reading's what matters because
reading's not going to go away.
I'm going to go a little extreme here. I would suggest it might be that unless you decide to go to be a writer, there's no benefit in learning to write well than me and you being really good at high-level math that we would need for an engineer.
Right.
Like, high-level math, I've never used it. I was good at it. I liked it. But, like, I've never used high-level math since graduating high school because of the career I went into. And so maybe writing is going to be the same way. Like, you totally don't need it. You need to be able to read. And then whenever you pick a career or you go into a field, you have to develop all kinds of skills, right? Like you and I do weird stuff. We video edit. We're downloading this and doing a lot of tech stuff. And so we're always getting new skills to try to help ourselves improve or whatever. But saying I would have obviously known that when I was in 11th grade that these were the skills I needed to onboard, probably not. I mean, when I was in high school, the thought that most of us were going to be able to video edit in some way would have been hard to believe.
I wouldn't even have thought that in high school. I didn't realize how much video editing is like a huge thing now.
It's huge. I mean, people can do it on their phones now, right? So I think kids are just learning how to do it.
Yeah, they are.
So as adults, now that we need to do it, we didn't get to learn as kids, so we learn how to do it, right? We teach ourselves how to do it. So it seems like you need to be able to read, because if you can't read, you can't, even...
Yeah.
You can't...
Then you're lost.
Then you're lost.
You have to know how to read.
But I'm going to take a maybe aggressive stance here and just kind of say, I'm not sure the writing matters if you don't want to be a writer.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I would feel like you would need to learn it in some capacity, but then after 9th grade, do you need to know it? Because it would be hard to teach somebody how to read without teaching them how to write first. And I'm not talking about paragraphs or papers, but just the alphabet.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. But it's there's going to be some grade cutoff level.
Where it's maybe we don't need this.
You just about wouldn't have to. I mean, because we memorized the periodic table.
Ew.
And
I didn't do that.
I had to memorize it. And
I cheated.
I didn't, but I don't remember.
What was that one? Is that helium?
Confession time. I don't remember any of it, hardly.
This is why you should have cheated.
Yeah,
it wasn't that
why I should have, apparently.
I'm just kidding.
So,
don't do that.
It's hard to think. I used to think that was a big educational thing, was writing, because you wrote emails and you wrote stuff, and people that can't write well, it really hampers them. I'm that way in text and stuff, so if we text or message, you can see that I'm just a typo, bad grammar, whatever. But
who even cares, though? That's the other thing. It's okay, this is a whole different
But if we didn't know each other, it'd matter, right? If we were writing and you wouldn't care either?
I think that spontaneous speech, for a while, we were talking about this the other day, the professionalism piece, where it was you have to wear a suit and a tie, and I think there was that on writing too. But when you look at the different demographics and look how they all interact with each other, there's not one set. There is a correct speech, but it's not the one we use the most common. The one we use 99.9% of the time is spontaneous speech, and so it's you just get used to it and you just adapt, and then it is what it is, and nobody should care. The only people who've ever cared about my typos are weird smarter, holier than thou people, and it's why are you so arrogant? I don't even know you. I don't
some people are bothered by it because they if you're a teacher or your job is tied to it, you notice it a lot more.
Yeah, but still, I would never call it out.
Right. I don't get corrected on it in a negative way. I did a presentation just the other day and I had typos in, and people tease me, but in just a fun way, not in a they didn't even tell me what they were. They were just kind of joking around with me about it. I don't know people care too much. I mean, a presentation...
I've had some weird interaction. Do you want to hear my latest story?
Sure.
Okay, so I spelled Columbia and as the state instead of the country. Okay. Easy mistake, right?
Columbia, I don't know
Columbia,
how to spell.
You pronounce them pretty much the same way.
Yeah.
So I spelled one with an O and it was supposed to be with U, and this guy's it's this way, basically stupid American. It's basically what he called me. Mm-hmm. And so I was just well... I can fix stupid, but I don't think you can fix being a great person. Block, why are you talking to me? I don't know. So it was just very weird.
I have confidence he could become a great person.
I don't think so.
I'll
tell you more later.
Gee, no hope in humanity over here, Mariah. No hope in humanity.
None.
Well, we should probably wrap up. So it's interesting, training of AI and whatnot. I'm interested to see if Chat GPT-5 or whatever the latest one's going to come up and see how it happens, and we'll have to talk quite a bit about it. So new things happening all the time. Some of them are more granular. I'm not sure how much to say. How integrating AI into APIs and stuff like that is interesting for people to learn about. But if something comes up, we'll be here to cover it. Thanks for joining us on Almighty AI, and we'll see you again.